G'day and welcome to David Joshua Ford Live. This is episode 92, and on today's show we're taking a look at Elgato's Stream Deck Studio. They've been very kind to send me two of these to look at in the studio here. So we're going to go through the network setup, how to sort of arrange it, what you might use it for, what I think is so groundbreaking about them, and then also we'll look at the contents, what's on the devices, what comes in the box, and then how to control that through a bunch of different software things. If you are new here, drop g'day in the chat. It'd be great to hear from where you're from, and any questions you have as we go along, we'd love to answer those. I'll do a bit of a presentation of the device, and if that brings up any questions for you, do drop that in the chat and we can go along and answer them. So the Stream Deck Studio is Elgato's latest control surface, offering with some groundbreaking features. For me, it's the one new rack mountable solid metal design. It's got 32 buttons, 2 rotaries. It's got an NFC tag reader, a USB surface expansion slot. But most of all, it has PoE+. And for me, this is the really novel thing here, because USB used to really limit us to a local computer. But now you don't actually need a local computer workstation, and you can connect via a single cable with power control all the way back to a central server. So it means you can centralize your management, which is going to have easier security, administration, and updates. And it also means you can do very long distances. So rather than USB being about sort of 6 to 15 feet before it becomes unreliable, Ethernet can run for hundreds of feet, and it's going to be really great for bigger installations. So let's kick off and let's take a look at this network diagram. Let me just get this one up and going. Got over here. All right. So just want to look at the configuration here and how this is sort of different to earlier Stream Deck Studios Stream Deck XLs that were purely USB based. So just imagine you are sitting at your desk and you've got a Stream Deck XL and you're connected via USB to a computer, and you have to be pretty close to that because the device is, as I said before, only sort of 6 to 15 feet before that really becomes unreliable. So you might be running something like Companion to control the Stream Deck, or the other way that you could do it is you could do Companion Satellite on another computer. So in this instance, the Stream Deck is connected to this host computer, and then Companion Satellite, the application, is connected via a network switch back to a secondary computer, which could be on someone else's work desk, or it could be a computer that's in a rack somewhere, but you've got this distance between the main workstation and your server. And so that means that when you are pressing keys on the Stream Deck, then it's going through Companion Satellite to Companion Server. But that's a whole nother computer that you have to have on the desk, and it's not just hardware, but it's power and it's space, and it's updating that, and it could also be security in terms of having a computer there when maybe all you need is buttons to press. So in this instance, we can get rid of all that, and if we bring in the Stream Deck Studios, what's really novel here is that all we need to connect to a workstation is an Ethernet cable. So we don't need to have computers, we can just have the single cable that runs back to a PoE switch for power and also for control. And so think about this in terms of centralizing this into a rack, whereas you might have had other Stream Decks which were sitting on your desktop. This is about getting the control of that database server, sort of Companion buttons, even Elgato's software, actually not Elgato software, back to a centralized server where you can distribute to multiple users. So in this case, we've got 2 users here, or you could have 4 users, many users, and also a surface like in the rack itself. So whether you're needing to control this at the rack server in an IT box, or you want this out on a studio floor, this means you don't have to have a whole computer set up there. You can just mount the hardware and then run an Ethernet cable back there. So each of these connected via Ethernet back to the PoE switch, and then that is speaking to the computer's server. So that is sort of an idea of the network and what's so important about that. Whoop, I just gotta pull my head back this way. So like I was saying, who is this product for? Well, it's probably not if you're running sort of a small local desktop scenario like streaming to Twitch or that kind of thing. The USB models are probably great for that already because they're going to be cheaper and you can have more buttons for your money. But if you're in broadcast, if you're in a TV studio or a professional live streamer, maybe you have a rack, whether that is something that is on your desk or whether that is something that's in a server or something that you travel with, then this is a way to get button management into all sorts of places without having to run a whole nother computer. All right, let's take a look at the contents and what is in the box. So we have the Stream Deck Studio rack, and so this is basically what is in the box, just that. And then there's also some ears and some screws to mount that on the edge if you want. There's also some mounting holes. Let me just go down here. This is very out of focus. My overhead camera is playing up. Here, if you want to do some sort of custom mounting on side by side. Let's come back to this shot because that is, I don't know why I feel like that camera has been playing up a bit. So that's basically all that comes in the box. So you're going to need your own USB or Ethernet cables, and I think that's fine because it's a very sort of custom install, and people are going to need different lengths of cables. So I think it's fine just sort of having the hardware in there. There's also a quick start guide, but that's pretty much it. If we take a look at the device itself, let me see if I can jump back over to my close-up. It's still blurry. I don't know why that's suddenly going blurry. I'm gonna come back here. It's gonna work with this shot. So rugged metal housing, we've got, as I said, 32 buttons across a 1U interface, and we've got a card reader, rotaries, and on the back side we've got PoE for Ethernet and power, and then there's also a USB-C here for power and data. This thing does draw 25 watts, so generally you would probably find that you're not going to, if you just plug this purely in USB into the computer's port probably doesn't have enough power, in which case on this side is another USB-C, I think it's power delivery 3.0, 9 volt, 3 amps. So that can be powered from this side, and that means you can either plug it in via USB-C to the computer for control, or if you have an Ethernet switch that doesn't have PoE in it, then you could just plug it into a regular old Ethernet switch and power it via the USB-C. So and then the other thing on here is there's a USB-C expansion port, so you can actually add another surface to the front side of that. All right, let's take a look at software control. And you've basically got 4 options, I would say, when you want to control this. There's Elgato's Stream Deck app, there's BitFocus Companion, which we'll talk a lot about, BitFocus Buttons, the new kid on the block. There's also Skaho Reactor. I don't have experience with that, so I'm not going to speak to that today, and I'll just focus on the other 3 ways of controlling it. So with Elgato, basically USB, I don't think it works over the network. I think you just plug it in via USB-C to your computer, and then you would use it like you would use any other Stream Deck surface and just get going as normal. So not too much to say there, but that's probably not what you bought it for. You probably bought it for BitFocus Buttons. That is the new software of choice that Elgato is promoting to use with the Stream Deck Studio. And it is free while it is in beta, and then after it is not in beta anymore, it is going to be $9 for an individual one, which gives you 3 surfaces, or $40 to control 10 surfaces, and then Pro and Enterprise ones are sort of $100 plus. So it is different from Companion, whereas Companion is free and open source. Buttons you will have to pay for, but for the types of clients that they're dealing with, which are sort of larger studios and enterprise, I think it's probably wise to have that commercial backup behind that, because you want someone to go to say that things are not working. Otherwise, you're going to be using Companion, and if you wanted to add a feature or you had a bug, then you're going to have to go to GitHub and just sort of post it there, and hopefully someone will be able to help you out with that. All right, the next one that we have is, let me just get over to BitFocus over here. Here we go. Where are we? So the next one is BitFocus Companion, and this is the free and open source software that so many people use and love on a daily basis. And most of my experience has been programming the Stream Decks to use with Companion. So I'm pleased to say that the Stream Deck Studio is really easy to use with Companion and integrates well. Either via USB-C, you can sort of plug that in as you would any other device, or ideally what you're doing is you're plugging in via the PoE Plus, and then the device will automatically adopt an IP address. And then we can go to the Surfaces tab, and under Discover is where these will pop up here with their IP address. And then you can go Add Stream Deck. I've already done that here. Under Remote Surfaces, you can actually remove ones if you don't want them to be there. And then they will live under Configured Surfaces, and they'll have an IP address, and you can change their settings like you would other ones. So one thing you might want to do is change the offset of the grid. So when you have, if you're used to using a Stream Deck, let's see if I got some of the short thing here. So the Stream Deck XL, then if you wanted to line up these buttons, what you'll find is by default, it's actually sort of like that. So you'll be missing this first row of buttons because this rotary is actually occupying first row. So what you will need to do is go into Surfaces. I'll go to Stream Deck 1, Settings, and in this horizontal offset of the grid, I'm just reducing that by 1. So you'll see if I increase that, then I'm sort of moving where these buttons sit. So I can actually place it anywhere I want on the grid that way. So I've made a button here called Rotary. This is normally how it would show up. Sorry, no, it would show up as, where are we? 0, which would be like that. So this would be missing the button here. So -1 is how you offset that. But then you're also going to need to add another column, because by default that column doesn't exist. And so that's where you would go into, where are my settings? And under the button grid size, you can edit that and just make the minimum column -1 and the maximum column 16. And then that will actually give you, let me go back to a page that makes sense. Something like this. This will give you, this is the new column that we created here, the -1. And then that will give you 18 columns, I guess, to work with. And I'm just working with this upper section for these pairs. Now, you'll notice that I have been able to group these. And so by putting 2 of them together, I'm sort of recreating, bring this one over here, is the same sort of thing, kind of similar to that sort of 8x4 layout. And the way that we do that is we go to Surfaces, and we would create a group and just give it a name. You call it Stream Deck Studio Group. I've already done that up here, this group here. You can choose which page you want it to be on, but you just create the page, and then it's actually going to the Surfaces and adding it to the group, which is where the magic happens. So I've got Stream Deck Studio 1 and 2, and under Settings, that's where I can either, by default, it'll be sort of standalone, and you can see it's sort of doing its own thing now, and it has popped out of this group, and it's down here. So go back to Settings, and I would go Stream Deck Studio Group, and we've already offset it for -1, so we'll close that. And then for the second one, the lining up here, I've actually got offset by horizontally -1, because we want to allow for this rotary, but then I've actually said the vertical offset is 2. So if this was 0, then these would be identical. but I want them to match. I'll bring this down here. I want this to be the second row here, and so if I just the other way here, increase this to 2, then now we've got all of the buttons covered in what a lot of people probably have, these sort of 8x4 configurations, and you've got a profile that you've built out, so that will fit that well. All right. What else we got? We've got the NFC tag with Companion. So it's really cool. The NFC tag works well, and I think the important thing about the tag is, if you think about a workstation, it means that you can have a surface. I'll cut here. It's in shot. There we go. It's sharp. With an NFC tag, which are these ones here, it means you can have a panel at a workstation in a sort of organization, and it can be locked, and then someone has an NFC for them and they unlock their profile. So it means that you don't actually have, it's gone out of focus again. It means you don't have to worry about a computer there and the security of that. So it's just a more secure way of working and easier to sort of to think about that. So what you can use is, actually I think I've got this before. I'm gonna get my wallet. You can actually use any sort of NFC, and I had what was I using before? My wallet and my bank card. I think that's the one I had. Let's throw this one away. So any NFC. Here I've got a New York subway pass, and I've just got my bank credit card. And let me just make sure that I've enabled this. I think I have, yeah. Oh, I might have, I think I reset the firmware. Give me 1 second, and I'll just make sure this is going. Settings, okay, that should be good. So for example, I could put the subway card to be a VLC operator, and then maybe I want to give this credit card the ability to change routing. And it's basically when you tap the card, it will jump to a particular page, and then as long as that page doesn't have any buttons that jump it to other areas, then you're semi-secure. All right, so let me see. I got to go back to my close-up shot, which is killing me. I'll go a bit wider. Hopefully that'll be good. All right, so if I scan this one, you can see it's jumped to this VLC profile here. And if I scan the bank card, it goes to this one. So I'll go through that in another video in more detail, like how to make that happen. But essentially you are under, let's go back to SuperSource. When you, in the settings for Elgato Stream Deck Studio, under here, you can choose a variable to store the last read NFC tag. So very quickly, what I'm doing is I'm creating a custom variable, choosing to assign it to this surface here, and then creating triggers so that when that variable changes, that it basically moves that surface to a page, and then it clears the variable so it's ready to go again. And that's how I can very simply assign things to a credit card. Or the other really neat thing is for cents, like 30 cents, you can get these NFC stickers. And if you could stick them on some sort of card, like a business card or anything like that, and then you've essentially got a sort of unique ID that you could assign to people. So, I mean, I got a pack of 50 here for about 15 bucks off Amazon, mostly for sort of around the home type automation stuff that I'm going to take a look at. What else we got? Let me go to, I'll come back to here. I did the groups, and we did the NFC tag, and okay, cons or things that I think could be improved. I did find some of the the key press is a little bit different to the XL, and I want to give this some time to sort of properly use it. I don't know if it's just like wearing it in, but let's see if we can jump back up here. So I just find if I'm moving quickly, there's occasions. I don't know if I'll do it now. This is all pretty good. Okay, but there are occasions when you press a button and I feel like it gets a little sticky. So I know that's been, some people have said that about Stream Deck buttons. Generally, I've actually found them to be pretty good. The XL ones, I've had no problem switching entire shows for big companies with, and I feel very safe and secure with those Stream Deck buttons. So I don't know if it's just getting used to, these ones sit a little flatter, which is quite nice. And you've also got this like potential for a whole lot of buttons if you just keep on stacking up the panels. Would also get very expensive, but just sort of something to think about there. The other thing is that these have wider keys, so you'll probably notice on these that there's a little bit of black on either side of the key here, whereas with the XL, they fill the whole button. With the button software, this fills it full screen, so it's probably not really something to worry about or think about. I'll be curious once I get into buttons and spend time designing the buttons if I have to think about square and wider ones, just because they're like, with buttons, you still want to use something like an iPad and other surfaces, like the Stream Deck as well, to extend off this surface. Actually, that's something I haven't shown you yet. So if I go up to, move this up here, create a bit more space, you can very easily, make sure you update the firmware on this first, because initially I thought this didn't work in Companion, because it was working in buttons, but it wasn't working in Companion, so I just sort of assumed that the Companion didn't know how to speak through this. But there's an expansion slot on the front of these, so it means that if you've installed this into a rack, and maybe this is more of a routing thing, then you could have your mobile rack that is sitting somewhere on a desk or on the floor, and then you can just come along and plug in a Stream Deck XL or another Stream Deck into here, and plug this one in there, and it will basically read this as a whole another surface. So this is now like an independent surface that I could use to switch a show from more of a desktop position, unless you were to mount this into a desk or have a certainly configured desk where this is angled just like at the right spot for you, then like this really sort of belongs in a rack as opposed to a desktop. So it's really neat that they've got this in there, because it means you can have a whole nother panel. Like if you wanted to have a bunch of macros just sitting on the side, you can expand it out that way. So I think that's really cool. And I think it also kind of shows what's possible, because essentially you've got this, this Stream Deck, rather than it connecting to a computer on the network to speak to Companion, you've got this going through the IP address of these Stream Deck studios. So it'd be great to see an adapter which can, you can plug any Stream Deck into to then expand the, to basically put a regular old Stream Deck on the network. I think that'd be really cool, and I think that would be possible. So yeah, but that is an easy way of expanding that out. What else do we have? I was going through, I was in the cons, and then I started talking about good things. I think that's mostly it. I think, what else is there? Just some things to note are that because this requires more power than a regular surface, I don't think most computers will be able to power these off a single USB-C cable. You probably need to add in the secondary USB-C power. It'd be interesting to see if there was some sort of adapter so that you could run just one cable up on to somewhere rather than having two cables plugged in. And as far as I'm aware, you can't daisy chain these two, in the sense of like having one IP address for this one and then using the the front expansion port coming out of this into the back. I've tried doing that and it doesn't connect. So I don't know if that's bandwidth or whatever the limitation is there, but yeah, it doesn't seem to work. All right. Thanks for watching that, and hopefully that sort of stimulated some ideas and questions that you have, and we can sort of go through questions now. So if you have more questions, drop them in the chat. Nils, great to have you here. And Nils asks, will you be using the Stream Deck Studio on the desk, or are you sticking to the XLs? It's a great question. So, and it sort of depends on what the design philosophy is. I mean, there's different tools for different jobs, and let me just get rid of that. Like, these are really professionally targeted devices which belong in either in a rack in a sort of server room, or like mounted on a desk. You could have it accessible there. So it's in broadcast rooms and stuff. I can see this being really popular. My own aesthetic here in this sort of space is that I try to keep things as clear as possible. Partly so I can bring in different things and demo different things, but I kind of like having a wide desk. And so my depth here is too much. Like if I was to mount it over here, that would be way too much of a reach for me. And then the other one I've been thinking about is mounting it down here. So I could sort of put it along the side here. Let me see if I can pick this one up. And sort of like custom mount it there. That'd be kind of an interesting one. You might sort of hit the knees a little bit. But really, I'm looking for buttons that can be moved out of the way. So I think I'm still, I mean, ideally what I want is something like the Stream Deck XL, but that has some rotaries and other control things, you know, like PTZ control into that, and something that is the PoE ability, because installs that I've done for clients often runs up against the problem that if you've created a workstation for someone, like a control room, and then you have a rack which is further out of the way, you run up against that USB problem of only 6 to 15 feet before you've got problems with the peripherals. So having the network cable is so good. So I would love to see something maybe about this size of like two, within 19 inches here. It's a good kind of like two hands. A lot of buttons for different switching and routing. I think it wouldn't get too confusing because you could color code it and put them into groups and that kind of stuff. So that's really what the device is that I would be looking for. So what I'm going to be using these for is, one is going to go into the rack that I will build next year. So I'm going to expand my rack and clear my throat. Yeah, so in 2025, what I'm doing is I've got a 4U rack, which is pretty contained. You were seeing on the channel, I don't know, it was a year ago now that I built that. So I've got a lot more stuff that I'm trying to fit in there, and I need probably 10U or something. So I'm weighing up the portability versus getting things like usage into a certain amount of space. So I think one of these will definitely go into that. And then the other one will be either here for demos and teaching you how to use this stuff. I need to play around with buttons and actually sort of learn how to use that. And so that's where this hardware will be really good to be able to experiment with that and learn a whole new program. So one will be floating. And I did wonder about even maybe some sort of mount could be really cool that has some hooks that come out. So like underneath, if it sort of pops out, and you could sit it in there so it's not permanently installed, and then when you take it away, it's spring loaded so it snaps, the hooks snap back flat against this, so that you could just sort of have a workstation. I know some people have thought about mounting it in the desk. I don't want to cut a hole in the desk. I wouldn't be adverse to screwing holes under the desk because that's less of a sort of cosmetic and structural change. But that's yeah, that's what that's what I'm thinking about. SportFlow, thanks for testing the new Stream Deck Studio. You're welcome. Hopefully that was useful. Like this review, I just watched the review video. If you haven't seen that, this presentation that I've just done is basically the long-winded version of that. But if you want 8 minutes to kind of recap that, then I just uploaded a review video of this. Emerald says, I've been looking at 2U angled racks. So make a desk version with 2 studios. 2U angled racks. Yeah, I guess you could have that on the, I imagine those are the ones that just kind of sit there and could be moved around. So maybe I might even look at a 1U housing that could just sort of sit further back. Yeah, I think it's for me, the philosophy is an extension of like, these Stream Decks make life so much easier and live streaming so much better. Like you think about before I had a Stream Deck and Companion and that kind of stuff, I would have had to have a huge ATEM control panel and a mixer and like a lighting thing, and like all of that is now sort of virtual, and I'm able to control it sometimes through a Stream Deck, sometimes even just through like a Stream Deck pedal that I have under the desk, and I can just advance a cue with like a single press. So it's like having one single button, as long as you've got the the programming behind it. So that's where I'm trying to like keep this space as clear as possible, but I could maybe, sort of have a 1U thing sitting here. I just don't like I'm trying to avoid things in between me and you, like between the camera and the person talking as much as possible. I'll try to keep it out of the way, which is why I've got like a really sort of flat keyboard, which gives me control of the computer, but it doesn't it's not like I'm sitting behind something as I talk to you. But that's me in this studio doing a sort of weekly live stream. I think for someone who's running a broadcast studio, that's a totally different scenario, and these will be well placed. And I think those angled racks will work really well. I often find you've got limited space in broadcast rooms, like you don't have hugely deep desks, and so having something back there is probably good within arm's reach. Why do you think Elgato has stuck with the rubber buttons instead of switching to mechanical switches? Don't know. That's a good question. I think they're looking for different button types, but these ones are very similar to like all of their buttons have been similar. I actually quite like them. Like I like the sort of the rounded edges on these. They come down here. I know they look a little plasticky with the lights and how that sort of warps the appearance of it, but I don't know, they just seem friendly to me. And for as I said before, with the Stream Deck XL, I've never had any problems missing a switch. Like I feel like, I'll cut a whole show just like on 8 buttons like here, across here, between like cut and switching different angles, this kind of thing. So haven't had a problem with that. As I said, these ones sit a bit flatter, so they feel a bit different. I would imagine some of the challenge is you've got buttons here, like these aren't individual screens. This is like a panel, like a little long LCD screen, and then over the top of it is the mechanical pieces. So it just looks like it's divided up into different buttons, and so there's an element of like you've got to peer into it. So there's some depth there that if you're, depending on the angle, you can actually lose sight of the button. So if it's not angled correctly, that's probably why with the XLs they have the sort of the 45-degree angle, so then rather than sitting flat at a desk, it would angle up so you can see them more easily. Yeah, like I said before, for me, I like things flat. I like being able to sort of see across things. If I'm trying to like reach to something else, you know, even when I'm on location switching a show, I'll probably have like a laptop in front of me and then the Stream Deck in front. So I'm switching the Stream Deck and I want to be able to reach over that to access something on the laptop without having too much of a, you know, like a reach over. And when these are propped up, I find there's a bit more of a, it's just hard to type on a laptop. And now I'm just doing a whole lot of weird little hand gestures. What do we got? Bomberman 117. I have seen mods to make the XL into a rack mount. It's on Etsy, and they should have made another studio without all that stuff. Yeah, there's a whole sort of third-party market of, you know, wall mounts and tripod mounts and desk mounts and putting it up near the screen, and which is always good, but as a mass market product, it's a lot harder to get movement behind that. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting if they, even just with the Stream Deck XL, had. Let's see if I can get some more surfaces over here. Wow. Dropping surfaces all around the place. You know, they could, it would be so cheap to make a chassis that would just like hold two of these, and then kind of, the USB kind of clicks in, and then you've got a surface that's a sort of two surface, or, you know, and I feel like there would be value in that, because then it'd be cheap to make, and it would promote buying more surfaces, you know, rather than just having one. The challenge is still, I think, like the more and more surfaces that you plug into things, the more you've got like just USB rat sails hanging off everything. So, you know, like you can plug this one in as well. Let me go into here. I think I haven't plugged this one in yet. You know, so now I've got, how many surfaces have I got here? And I could plug in more. I got one over here. Get rid of that cable. So, you know, at some point from a management point of view, you just like, that's what's so neat about the one PoE cable, you know, is, where am I gonna fit this? And I've also got the emulator here, which is running the show there as well. And then this one can sit over here in the corner. And then I've got my one over here. You know, we've just, like, once you start getting this many buttons and you're trying to arrange a desk, like this is where you need a new product. And I think there is room for it, like a desktop one. But it's nice having the versatility, you know, like the XLs are amazing because they're just so, they're actually so small and compact. You know, I know that there's smaller ones, but they're actually, you know, 32 buttons in something you can hold in your hand. But then also being able to just like grab an iPad and walk around a venue and still make cuts and stuff like that. So, you know, I think versatility is key here. And then you have that with Companion, and you also have that with the buttons software. So there's, you know, this is the way of the future. Let me get back to my comments here. Emerald says, have you ever looked at the modules from MakePro? The MakePro X series gets real modular. I haven't, but I will check that out after this. Excellent. Well, that looks like all the questions that we have. So we might wrap up. Let me see. Where am I? Yeah, hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to do more videos on the Stream Deck Studio because there's a lot to learn here, and there's some really cool features. The NFC tag, for example, like there's so many use cases that you could have with that. And I can go into that in another video about how to actually set that up in Companion so that it reads it. I also thought it'd be interesting just from a, you know, maybe I'll buy like an NFC card reader off, I wonder if that would work. No, that wouldn't be built in, would it? But I'm wondering if you could like buy an NFC card reader that just sits somewhere on a desk, and then you could use an XL or something like that. So I wasn't sure if the NFC card reader would be gimmicky when I first saw it, but then as I've seen how easy it is to use and the use cases that you would have, particularly in an organization, like house of worship or business or production studio, where you've got a lot of people coming and going, it really makes it much easier with a like sort of physical thing that you can assign someone to, rather than and you can also log in on the device using sort of keypads if you want to go that way as well. All right, but until next week, take care. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more Stream Deck Studio videos coming your way. All right.